I'm actually quite excited about this next chat. I think it's going to be quite eye-opening. Basically, I met Allie a little while back. I'm sure that a couple of people who were sat here for the panel recognise her. Allie has, I'm sure she won't mind me saying this, but Allie suffered, or still suffers from mental health issues since she was a teenager, and she's used endurance running to kind of help her cope with that. Now, strap yourselves in for the next half an hour, because I think it's going to get frank, I think it's going to get honest, and this is a woman that doesn't do things similar to anyone else. So please, put your hands together for the amazing Allie Bailey.
Yeah! Thank you very much. And I'm going to show you a 3-minute video, which is definitely not an advert for Rat Race. I'm Allie Bailey. So in those 3 little clips that you just saw, that was 3 events that I did in 2018 as a test pilot for Rat Race. Now this little chat I'm doing is not about being a test pilot for Rat Race, but basically what I want to show you that, because that is kind of the crux of the last 7 years of kind of where I'm at with running. So I'm going to do a little short history on me. I promise it won't be too boring, but if it is, you can just go over there and play the sport. But I started running maybe 7 or 8 years ago as a result of a doctor telling me that my depression got to the point where medication wasn't working so well anymore. So he said to me, maybe you should go out and get some exercise. My first thought was, I'm not great at exercise, I was rubbish at school, it's not going to work. I was so depressed that I just didn't physically feel like I had the energy to get out. And I still to this day don't know why this happened, but I put my Converse trainers on, and some leggings, and I ran from my house in Whitechapel down to Tower Hill, back again. And it wasn't a pretty thing, but it made me feel better. It didn't cure me, it didn't make me feel like I wasn't depressed anymore, but it made me feel better. And from that day onwards, I kind of did a little bit more every day. To cut a long story short, I decided to enter the London Marathon. My mum got very sick. I've been running a little bit, and I was like, oh, London Marathon is the marathon, I'll just do one, I'll do it for 1:30, so I entered it. I ran it for breast cancer care, and I did the whole thing completely wrong in that I got a training plan from Run As Well, I believe, or one of the other publications are available, and I followed it to the letter, and I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, I was eating properly, and I piled this immense pressure on myself for this imaginary sub-4 time that everybody in the kind of media was talking about. I did not know what sub-4 meant. All I knew was it meant under 4 hours, and I was like, well, if everybody goes for that, then that's definitely what I should be going for. So I trained and trained and trained. The day came, and I was actually quite badly injured. I really injured my ITV. And I ran that marathon in 4 hours and 2 minutes. And I was so broken. I was so broken. I was like, I failed, I haven't done it right. And ultimately fell into a huge pit of despair where all these things that I put on top of myself had just kind of crumbled into nothing. And it was awful. And I think that is a real worry when it comes to anybody who has this thing with your mental health where things can let you down and you can really kind of fall into a hole very, very easily. I got to the point where I have attempted suicide, and I've not even done that properly. And when I go to the doctor and I'm like, you need to help me, I've cut my wrists, the doctor's like, yeah, actually, you've not cut your wrists, you've kind of done that wrong. And my reaction to that is, I can't even kill myself properly, not, thank God I'm alive. So it really, really upset me, and I decided I was going to try and pick myself up and give it another go. In the meantime, I was achieving my dream career of working in the music industry. I'd been applying for years and years, and finally I got my break, and I was working in marketing at one of the biggest record labels in the UK, so working every hour that God sent, and had all this pressure at work on top of me. So life was kind of a strange balance. Like I was achieving the things I wanted to achieve, but I was desperately miserable and desperately under pressure. And I believed that this was the life that I should be leading. Like, this was it. You know, I planned this when I was 14, and it should be all right. And I couldn't kind of put my finger on what it was that was making me so depressed. Everything is like, when you're depressed, everything is like syrup. You're walking through the syrup. You're walking through the fog. Everything's 4 times harder, and it's very hard to see the ray of light in anything at all. With my running, there were glimpses of light, so I would go out when I've used this in a number of blogs. When I run, I sometimes feel like all my problems are falling out the bottom of my feet. I feel like my blood's rushing around, it's almost like a blood transfusion. And sometimes I feel like, because I can't think of anything else, because I can't think of looking at my phone or looking at what other people are doing, it's a massive distraction, and you're just focusing on your breathing and yourself and that kind of thing. That feeling goes away when you stop doing it. So you get home, you've got all your things, your whiffles flying around in your head, you've got this amazing feeling, but that feeling fades away. It's kind of like constantly taking medication. At some point that has to stop, and you have to focus on why it is that you're unhappy and the changes you can make to make yourself happy. So I signed up for another marathon, and I spent 3 or 4 years road running and doing marathons after marathon and going after the time, the PB, looking at all the stuff on the internet, and there is so much stuff on the internet, about how I can be better, what I can eat, how I can be faster, fast. You have to be fast, you have to do it in sub this, you have to do it in sub that. And I didn't know at the time, this is very hindsight, but I was actually making myself more miserable because I wasn't achieving the things that other people were telling me that I should be achieving, or the things that I thought other people were telling me that I should be achieving. And it got to the point where I was like, even running was trying to kill me. So I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm done. I just don't want to play this game. It was pretty awful. That pressure was put on me by me, but it was also put on me by social media, books I read, people I talked to, and the kind of life that I had around me, and that my work was constantly telling me I wasn't good enough. At school I'd been told I wasn't good enough. Everything in the world that we live in is based on rank, it's based on money, it's based on whether you're first. Like, no one talks about failure, no one talks about things that you can learn by doing things wrong. If you do something wrong, if you fail, it's seen to be a bad thing. And this is kind of where everything was coming on top of me, and it was horrible. The reason I put these pictures up are because these are my Instagram photos, and they may look like I'm having a really lovely time, but in at least 5 of these photos, I'm in the middle of a massive depressive episode. But I'm like, I need to take a photo of myself having a nice time on a run, because I talk about running and mental health, and people are going to think that it's going to cure me and that I'm happy. That is absolute rubbish, and it's only in the last 6 months that I've kind of started to realise that although runners should work as a community, we should support and engage each other, we lie to each other constantly about the fact that running can make you worse if you have mental health issues, unless you deal with the fact that running is all about the individual and it's all about you and your journey. When I was going through this whole I hate running and it's the worst thing on earth, my sister told me that she was signing up for a race, kind of a race that I'd never heard of before. I'm originally from Dorset, and she was signing up for a trail race, and I'm like, oh, what is a trail race? Because I've been road running and looking at my times, and PBs and gels and all the stuff that you need to be really fast. And she was, oh, trail races in the woods and it's nice, and I was like, might as well give it a go. And that was when I was introduced to White Star Running, who are probably my favourite race company in the UK. They are, apart from that race, they are most glorious creatures on earth. But it was a gateway for me, because when I got to that race, I realised that nobody cared how fast my marathon PB was. Nobody cared, like, how brilliant I was a runner. Nobody actually knew who I was. I'd been so focused on this road running thing, like, I'm Allie, the girl that runs road marathons, that I hadn't, it became very selfish. It became like, it was like I had to prove something to all these people who actually had no idea who I was. So I remember getting to my first White Star race, and I believe it was actually my first ultra as well. And all these people there, they're all dressed in these like really colourful, amazing running kit. Not Nike running kit, not shoe running kit, not all the running kit that I've seen on the roads, but like leggings with unicorns on and cow print. And I'm like, yes, these guys aren't real runners. And they're just like, you know, what is this, a fun run? But I literally had the best time of my entire life. I talked to people. I did not feel like I had to run fast because nobody was running fast. And at the end of it, I felt amazing. Whereas I've been beasting myself through roads and beasting myself through 5Ks, I realised that you don't have to do that to call yourself a runner. You don't have to be fast, and you don't have to be first. And I think I said this at the stand earlier, you don't have to beat David Account's PB because it doesn't matter to anybody but you. Nobody cares about your PB apart from you. Literally nobody. And most people don't even know what it means. So you'll come back from doing your first marathon and you'll be like, what time did you get? And you'll be like, 3 hours. And they'll be like, oh, walk off, because they don't know what that means. They don't know if that's amazing, they don't know if it's rubbish. And when I say amazing and rubbish, I mean how society deems it's amazing and rubbish. But I think people get really, really hooked on this idea that you should be able to have this amazing PB. So my first trail running experience was so immense, it kind of shifted the whole way that I thought about running. And I was like, running is about community, it's about me being happy, and it's not about other people judging my achievement, because nobody actually cares. So I'm going to blow my own little trumpet now. It's a very small trumpet compared to some of the huge trombones of people's achievements in this room, but it's my trumpet, and that's important to me, so I'm going to blow it. I have done maybe 75 marathons and ultras over the last 7 years, and that's not because I want to join any club, and it's not because I don't think that that's particularly amazing, but what I do think is that shows the power of the running community in making me feel better about my mental health and about me feeling like I can achieve some things that maybe a few years ago I would never have even thought of doing, because I thought that achieving meant fast or meant first. So I've done some running. There's a nice advert for running in there, I believe, with all of those lovely White Star medals. And I have actually accidentally won some races. I didn't set out to win races, but what I did do was I chose my races, in that I will enter small race companies' races that generally women don't tend to enter, which means I'm the only woman, so I've won before I've even started, and that is the key to winning races. So yeah, I've been on a pretty glorious journey. You know, sort of 2 or 3 years into running, I was like, God, this is brilliant. I was not cured of depression. I was having episodes all the time. But I knew at the weekend, instead of going out on my own and getting drunk in London, I could go down to Dorset and I could hang out with some people who did not judge me on my job, did not judge me on how many records I'd sold that week. They did not care I was the girl from the music industry. They weren't all taking loads of drugs. What they were doing was running around fields, having a nice time, supporting each other, and drinking beer. And I was like, this is the best thing ever. It was like a huge escape. And I think I said this on the panel, running is like the biggest leveller for people, like especially when it comes to trail running and the trail running community, because you never ever have somebody come up to you at a race and the first thing they say is, what's your job? How much do you earn? What car do you drive? How many kids have you got? Are you married? Or are you renting a house? Like, no one cares, because we're all there for a shared experience. The same reason I got into the music industry is the same reason I love the running community now, because everybody is there for a shared experience at some kind of festival where there are no politics and no divisiveness, and we're kind of stripped back to what we should be, and that is social creatures that support each other regardless of what our achievements are. So that's me having a nice little rant about all this whole trail running thing. I'm not saying that the road running community is not supportive, because it absolutely is. And if running clubs are for you, then that's fine. But personally, for me, I find that focusing on the relationships I've found within running rather than my performance actually enhances my performance a lot more. So within this lovely running community, I was recommended to listen to a podcast. That podcast was, I think, one of Runners World's best running podcasts last year, because it's one of the only running podcasts, and that was Bad Boy Running. And someone said, listen to this, these guys are quite funny, because they kind of take the mickey out of the idiosyncrasies of running, and that's one of the things that I find helps me with my depression. One of my major things is if I'm depressed, I'll try and be funny, and I like to find the humour in the darkness of things. One of the things that I didn't like about road running was the seriousness of the whole thing. So I started listening to this podcast, just these two idiots talking about the funny stuff that goes on within the running community, and lots of other things as well, Netflix recommendations. And I started to get more and more involved with the community in the Facebook group, and I found a lot of people there that could give me advice on ultras and advice on kit and all that sort of stuff. And it was very, very honest advice, and everyone kind of took the mickey out of each other, and I was like, this is really lovely, because it's kind of like being in the pub with your mates and just having a genuinely nice conversation. No one's trying to sell me anything. No one's trying to sell me a plan or sell me a nutrition, whatever. Like, it was just amazing. And that is when I met a guy called Lee Stewart Evans. So Lee sent me a message on Facebook asking me if I would like to go on an adventure, and I was like, yeah, sure, as long as it's not cold. Literally the words that I wrote, as long as it's not cold. So Lee basically told me that there was a recce pilot crew going out to Mongolia to try and run 100 miles across a frozen lake, Lake Kohvsgol, in -47. So I said, sure, I'll come along for that. That sounds absolutely glorious. And ended up here, running across this lake in some of the most hostile conditions on Earth. Now, I'm not telling you that this is like, I'm the greatest person ever for doing this, because it doesn't matter what I've done, it doesn't matter where I've been. The point that I want to make is that when you are plunged into these environments, it's not the achievement of running 100 miles. Most people in this room could do that if I pushed them to do it. I'm not asking you to run it 7-minute miles, I'm asking you to get across it. The point is that you are stripped, completely stripped of everything that anyone knows living in the world that we live in. You have no communication with the outside world, and you rely solely on other people. And I think it's massively, massively important for us all to come back down to that idea. And believe me, I am not a hippie, and I love my phone, and I love my Instagram, and I love all that. But being here in this environment and having to rely on other human beings was something that has really, really made me realise what's important to everybody looking after their mental health. We are all living in an echo chamber that has been created to divide us and make us divisive against each other. When you are here and that echo chamber is gone, there is no divisiveness. You cannot be divided. You have no choice but to help each other and to work together. So after we finished this challenge, I came back, and guess what? I had a massive, massive depressive episode because I got off the plane and I came back into the real world and I was like, no, everything is awful. I had no sense of purpose. My life had lost meaning. This trip had taken a long time to plan. I'd done it, no one cared. I'd not made a difference to the world, and it was absolutely awful. It took me a long time to pull myself out of it. That is something that people don't talk about often enough. When you go and do these massive experiences, the come down at the end of it is so hard to deal with. On the flip side of that, dealing with that come down will help you to deal with any mental health issue that you have in the real world, because you get down to the core of it, you get down to what you're really, really about, and you can employ strategies to kind of help to build on that within your role within the society that you kind of live in. So it took me a really, really long time. I wrote a lot and I studied myself a lot, and of course I've been thrown back into Instagram, Facebook, social media. Who's doing this? Who's doing that? I wrote a blog. I read the blog. Who's reading the blog? No one's reading the blog. This person's done a better adventure than me. This person's fitter than me. This person's done it faster than me. And again, it's all building up into just like me comparing myself to other people, which is something that I'm telling you not to do, but I do all of the time. It got to the point with that where I decided that, I didn't decide, I kind of realised that the job that I was doing and the world I created for myself, the world that I told people from the age of 14 I was going to live, this glamorous music industry world, was actually the thing that was killing me. It was the thing that was forcing me to put this pressure on myself, and it was only through coming back from this adventure and realising that humans work together, humans are kind to each other, that I basically was like, I'm going to quit, I'm done. And I was very, very high up at that point. I was earning a lot of money, and I was very well respected, but I was like, I'm done. So I basically quit my job and went freelance. And I went back to trying to live a simple life and trying to work with bands that I like, trying to work with artists that I like, and trying to work with people that I like. Of course, it wasn't that simple. Things happen to you. And you end up working for people, working in situations that, again, can bring up those kind of anxieties and that kind of depression. But I kind of knew better how to deal with it. When I was in Mongolia, I remember being like, this is so cold, so hard. But every step I took, I was like, this is just like the mental health thing. So, some days when you wake up and you think that that's the end and it's all over, you just have to get to the end of the day. And it's the same with doing endurance running. You just take one step at a time. I call it relentless forward progress, but I've stolen that from the title of an ultra running book, but that's what it is. It's one step at a time, relentless forward progress, and that's how you get to the end of any race, as far as I'm concerned. So in November I got another email from Rat Race, and they said to me, it wasn't November, it was early in the year, and they said to me, would you like to come to Namibia and Panama? And I was like, sure. I had no money, put it all on my credit card, and off we went to Namibia and Panama. I'm not going to talk you through the whole thing because we don't have enough time, and also I'm a bit scared I might burst into tears. But Namibia was beautiful. We ran across the Namib desert, 55 million year old desert. No one's ever done that route before. Standing on sand dunes where you're just like, no human has ever touched this, is something that to your core makes you. It basically, like I say, this is strip things away, but it makes you live. It's very hard to live when you're on the phone all the time. It's very hard to live when you're on the email all the time. But something like standing on that dune, it's completely overwhelming, and it kind of defines who you are as a human being. It was amazing. I loved every single second of it. And it was difficult. 5 days crossing the desert, get to the end, and then I'm straight into Panama. And that was when Panama has basically completely rocked my world and completely changed the way that I'm kind of dealing with this mental health thing, because Panama was the most hostile environment I have ever been in. The idea was 2 days road running, 100 kilometres, 3 days desert, you're in the, 3 days jungle, carrying everything you need, your hammock, your kit, your food, 20-kilogram backpack. We would trek across the jungle, we would pop out the other side, and we would go to this lovely island in the Caribbean and have 2 days rest. That's the recce, see if we can do it, put it on sail. In reality, it's 2 days road running. We got into the jungle and it was absolutely horrific. Some days we were doing 6 miles in 15 hours. It was that hard. It was 28,000 feet of descent, which is Everest from sea level. And we all started to break. And this is the only time I've kind of broken. But the learning that I kind of want people to take from this is that we got to the point where we thought we were going to have to be extracted from the jungle. There were 5 people in that team. There was me, Jim from Rat Race, a guy called Darren, who's a really good endurance runner, a guy called Merlin, who's a really good OCR runner, and a guy called Rob. Rob works for Rat Race. He's in his 40s or 50s. He's a crew guy and he's never done anything like this before. And he was really, really scared of the jungle, like really, really scared. On the first day, we all start walking, everything's okay, we're climbing up these massive climbs, got our packs on, we're all right, we stop at 3 o'clock, set up our hammocks, everything's cool. From that day forward, everything got really hard. Knee-deep mud, sheer climbs, a bit like climbing stairs 3 at a time, but with rocks and mud. And you're doing that for hours and hours and days, and it became very clear that our route was wrong. It became very clear that we were going to spend 5 days in that jungle and not 3. And at that point, the carrot was gone, and I was like, well, there's no beach, there's no point, there's no nothing. And we were all exhausted. Again, to cut a long story short, we made it to the 5th day and decided to get out of the jungle early because we were never going to make it to the island, and we were all very, very, very tired. And on that day, Rob was quite far behind us. So we sent my friend James up to try and find Rob. And when Rob, after an hour and a half, appeared over the top of this hill, he was white, shaking, and basically dehydrating, to the point where we thought that was it. And we pulled him down the hill, and we took off his clothes, and we laid in the river, and he was shaking, and he was crying. He's a grown man, and he was telling us the things that he wanted us to tell his children, because he thought he was going to die, and it was petrifying. So, all the boys, I didn't know what to do, so I stood there and was like, I'm just going to feel smarter and like try and help the best I can. But all the boys got around him, laid him on the floor, did everything they could. After an hour and a half, he started to come round and he started to feel better. It turns out we were 500 metres from the extraction point. 500 metres, that was it. We was to go to one hill, we were going to be there. But it taught us, it taught me personally, so much about this whole thing. We are, us humans are born to work together. We are born not to be divided, and when push comes to shove, we will really, really help each other. I've spent my entire life working in an industry where that is not the case at all, where I'm pitted against other people, where to be the best, you have to be the first, you have to be, sell the most records, make the most money. Everybody in this room is exactly what I'm talking about. Whatever job you do, or whatever the pressures that you feel in your life, you have to be number one, you have to be the best, you have to have, everything has to be the way that it is given to you on the internet, on the TV, or whatever else it is. It's only through experiences with communities like trail running communities, it's only through pushing yourself through these massive endurance challenges that you see life as it is real. There is a huge danger of looking at other people's running Instagrams, looking at Strava and getting anxiety because you haven't run 16 miles, your mate has, or he's done it faster than you, or he's got a better PB than you. It all adds up to make running basically the same as your job, and that is not how it should be at all. You should use running to make you human, to kind of humanise you a little bit more. You should not listen to what people tell you you should do. You should not listen to everything that you read on Real Buzz. Don't take everything in Runner's World as gold. Of course, there's some amazing, amazing bits of advice, but let's be honest, everybody. If you followed every single bit of advice, you'd probably be injured for the rest of your life, or have really bad stomach problems, or be bankrupt, because everyone is telling you to do stuff. But running is personal to you, and it's your journey, it's about you, it's about what works for you. I eat cheese sandwiches and gherkins on ultras, but I've got people telling me I need to buy gels that don't cost me 50 quid. It's absolute rubbish. You have to find out what works for you. So I feel like I've ranted, but there is something that I wanted to reach you, and it's an email that I got from Rob, who is the guy that dehydrated on that last day. I got back from Panama 8 weeks ago. It's taken Rob 7 weeks to get this email to me. It's taken it to me and to the rest of the team because it was such a traumatic thing to happen to him. So Rob says, I went into the trip carrying quite a lot of nervousness and worry. Quite frankly, I knew my fitness was an issue and I was carrying more weight, fat, than I'd done for years. I was nervous about how I'd cope with the ant spiders and flying. I'm not going to say that word. In reality, I found the bugs and beasties fascinating and not scary, and the number of them was way less than expected. But my physical capability, or lack of it, was quickly exposed by the unforgiving terrain. The pressure I felt from being markedly slower than the rest of the group weighed heavy in an almost physical sense too. I was going as fast as I could. I tried many times to keep up, but I couldn't maintain it. I had to fall back and watch you walk away. I'm so thankful for the response of the team every time I caught up. I was relieved to be back in the gang and no longer alone, but importantly, you let me rest and recuperate before we started off again together, and that mattered to me. And then you went even further. I knew without question you were all suffering, but you took the weight off my back and put it into your packs. This allowed me to keep closer to the group, but with plenty of time alone to still dwell on being an actual burden to the group. I wasn't a happy chap. These feelings in my head were the hardest thing to cope with that I've ever experienced, and by far the most difficult to process and reconcile returning home, which is why I didn't dash off an email when I got back. I was thankful, but frankly more than a bit embarrassed at needing so much help and support. I'm not going to read the rest because I've been told to get off. But basically, Robin considered himself a burden for so long that it had taken him 4 or 5 weeks to write that email. And and it touched me like to my very heart that this grown man had had to process stuff like that for that long. And I think that that is basically an illustration of the way that a lot of people feel about a lot of parts of their life, and indeed a lot of parts of their running life. So I think what I want people to take away from this is that running is your personal thing, and you don't have to do everything people tell you to do. And I think the success when it comes to that sort of thing is not marked by being first, not marked by being fastest. It's marked by taking part, being kind, and supporting your fellow running community. And that's all I have to say on that.
I don't know about you, like I said in the very beginning, it was going to be half an hour of just pure honesty, and I think you got that from her, right? Yeah? I think it's very rare that you find somebody who will speak so openly, and as a founder of a mental health foundation myself, having people like this in the world will make a huge difference. So look, will you put your hands together for Allie Bailey, please? Well, we are running a little behind on time, but don't worry about that. Next up will be Nell McAndrew, so if you want to sit still for a little while, please be my guest, and she'll be on in a second.